Anders, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
This week you've been talking, or we've been talking a lot about the Internet of Things, and it's one of those things we're getting to the point of boredom hearing so much about it, and it's more talk than action.
Yeah.
But this week you've been working on developing some of the building blocks. Could you tell us what you've been doing?
Yeah, it's supposed to be Action Week, right? So I think we've actually tried our best to actually get something done. So I think it's a new emerging area. We are looking at both new industry verticals such as e-health, smart energy, connected car, even banking, things like that has an IoT angle coming into the forum in terms of work groups. So that's one bit, but the other important bit is just try to start to actually kind of align with the Frameworx assets and morphing them over to not just being the sort of old telco piece that will always exist, but also applying sort of an IoT perspective on those and actually identifying gaps for IoT. Do you have in Frameworx the right assets you need to have for it to make sense for new players in the industry? And or should they be called something else, or do they need to be evolved? And then what about security and privacy, by the way, in that? This is a very new area too. So we're actually starting to have real working deep dive sessions between the architects, represented within TMF, if you like, on kind of fairly deep level architecture and engineering work to define some of these things. So, real ground stuff.
So, I mean, would I be right in thinking, although you're talking about various verticals, and we'll come back to that in a minute, I mean, am I right in understanding that at the moment you're looking a great deal at the commonality, at the building blocks that underpin them all?
That's one piece that we've said with something we have called for some time the digital services reference architecture, for example, within Frameworx, TMF. There is probably a good shot at starting to identify some common patterns in IoT, some common components or services within IoT, and making it, if you like, a kind of guidebook, or we actually jokingly call this a cookbook with recipes for IoT for people who are wondering, they want to enter in IoT markets and so on, but they may not be very, they think, savvy in terms of what does it require from them and how does sort of ecosystems and partnering work in that area and so on. So the thinking here is that we could maybe add a lot of value to the industry by being some of the few that can actually put something like that together, a sort of recipes in the cookbook for IoT, if you like.
Well, in your role as a kind of Swedish chef for IT, maybe you can talk to me particularly about smart energy, where I know you've concentrated quite a lot of efforts. Yeah,
the smart energy project and catalyst has been going for some time now, a couple of years, and going from really very conceptual and educational and really a paper catalyst, if you like, to something which is now comprising the last round of 6 use cases prioritized by utility members that are new to TMF, and 3 of those use cases being actually developed and incubated at TMF between partners like my company BaseN and Esri and Infonova, etc. And ready to be demoed, piloted, outside TMF even at this stage. And
so what do you think is the most exciting and the most progressive of those use cases?
Yeah, the more obvious one I think that people can really relate to is the large grid and outage recovery use case, which is very, we have these kind of issues I think across the world, but Northern America, both US and Canada, this is a reoccurring problem almost like monthly. Do you have these big snowstorms or hurricanes or something of that sort coming in and ripping, both grid infrastructure and networks apart and causing all kinds of problems. And any chances you are to much more quicker detect via sensors and talking over an IP network where things break and so on, and the exact location and what type of equipment, and repairing that quicker saves basically a lot of headache and resources for
So the faster you find it, the faster you can fix it.
Absolutely. And that use case is all about that, to closing the loop and getting it back up as soon as you possibly can.
Anders, thanks for keeping the lights on.
Sure, thank you. You're welcome.